am delighted to introduce Barry Regan, Executive Vice President of Operations at Dexcom. Barry, you're very welcome to the Leaders Room.
Thank you, Anne.
So, because I suppose I'm here in Ireland, and because you broke ground on your first manufacturing facility in Athenry in just January of this year, I'd love to just ask you a little bit, for those who are not familiar, about Dexcom itself, and maybe about your global operations, and then kind of the innovative med tech that you're creating for patients, particularly with diabetes.
Sure, yeah, happy to, Anne. So Dexcom is a pioneer in the area of continuous glucose monitoring, and we have been in operation for almost 25 years. We're headquartered in San Diego in California. We've approximately 10,000 employees at the moment, but we're growing rapidly. We're actually adding over 1,000 employees on average per year, and in the last year we added almost 3,000 employees. We've got manufacturing operations here in San Diego and in Arizona. We've just completed a very large development in Penang in Malaysia, where we'll have almost 2,000 people manufacturing sensors there going forward. And as you said, we announced in May of last year that we're building a state-of-the-art facility in Athenry, County Galway. We broke ground in January. We're going to be hiring over 1,000 people in just over 2.5 years. And we're super excited about that. So what's driving all this growth? Well, our product today is used by 2.3 million people every single day. 1/3 of them are children. So it really makes our purpose even more meaningful. And essentially what our product does is it measures the amount of glucose in your body, and it measures it real time, continuously. And you apply a little patch to your arm, and behind that patch is a little sensor. And that sensor measures your glucose levels and sends it to your smart device. So your iPhone, your Android, your Apple Watch, whatever you're using as your smart gadget. And so you can see real time what your glucose levels are. Now, the old standard of care was pricking your fingers, which was very painful, particularly for children, and that could be 6-8 times a day. And actually the reason that I was drawn to Dexcom was that one of my best friends, when I lived in Memphis in Tennessee, Jason, his son Harrison, was diagnosed with type 1 when he was 11. And I saw the journey that family went through in the first month, where they were up all through the night, waking up Harrison, taking finger sticks, and it was just really traumatic for them. And then about a month after the diagnosis, they met their endocrinologist, and she recommended that they try a product called Dexcom, and it really changed their lives. And I saw the impact it had on not just on their son's health, but also on their mental health. So that's where I was introduced to Dexcom many years ago. And then, serendipity, a couple of years later, I got connected with Dexcom, and here I am. So that's what we do. Our product really makes a huge difference in the lives of millions of people around the world every day.
It's fantastic, and I'm going to come back to the product as well, if I may, a little later in the conversation. But I want to come back to the operation in Ireland, and I suppose I wanted to ask you, why Ireland and why Athenry?
Sure. Well, we're growing at about 30 to 35% compound growth rate every single year. And if you do the math, that means we have to double our supply chain capacity every 2.5 years. And that's a big lift. And so several years ago, we started looking, and I went to the board and said, we need to build another facility. And they were looking at me like, well, you haven't even finished the one in Malaysia and you want to build another one. And I said, well, yeah, because every 2.5 years, we've got to double our capacity. And one of our fastest growing regions was Europe, as we call it, EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And, shipping product from Malaysia, from the US to Europe just didn't make sense from all different lenses, but, sustainability being one of them, just shipping product and the cost of that too. So we looked at Europe, and we did a very detailed due diligence, and I traveled the highways and byways of Europe. I was everywhere, Hungary, Romania, you name it. And Ireland was one of the countries we looked at. And after a long due diligence, we settled on Ireland for a number of different reasons. And then when we looked at Ireland, we travelled all over Ireland and we looked at sites everywhere. And when we found the site in Athenry, we knew immediately this was going to be our home. One, because the site itself, if you're familiar with Ireland, there's two major motorways. I left Ireland 25 years ago when it took 4 hours to drive from Dublin to Galway. Now you can get there in 2 hours. But the main Dublin to Galway motorway intersects with the new Sligo to Limerick motorway. And our site is it's on the Dublin to Galway motorway, and it's 3 kilometres from the Sligo to Limerick one. Perfect location to, for in terms of commuting. And so if you draw a circle around Athenry with the new motorways, within a 30 to 35 minute commute, you've got access to 750,000 people. And we view every single one of those people as a potential employee. So that's why we love the location, because of the infrastructure that the government had invested in over the last decade or so. Second thing is there's already, as you know, an established ecosystem in the west of Ireland and there's many in the medtech space, and there's many medtech companies there already. And so we felt we could tap into that experience and also the supplier base that's there. So we didn't have to create something from scratch. So that was number two, why we like the west of Ireland. Number three, then we met with a number of the third level educational institutions. And you've got UCG, the college in Galway, when I was there, it was called UCG. I think it's NUIG now. But you've got the University in Galway, you've got the University in Limerick, you've got great colleges in Castlebar, in Sligo, Athlone. And so we're in the centre of all of that. And, we were going to need a lot of graduates going forward. And we were very impressed with, what the plans were in those colleges. And so that was the third reason why we thought the West of Ireland was a good spot. I think the last reason, why we finally decided on Ireland against all the other options was the ease of doing business. And the IDA are a tremendous organisation that partnered with us for several years. They came over here, they really listened to what our needs were, and they made it easy for us. And so, helping us find the site, making all the introductions to the suppliers, to the educational facilities. So for all of those reasons, we ended up in Athenry, and, it is a rural location or a provincial location, and that was deliberate. That was very strategic. We did not want to be in the middle of Dublin, in the middle of Cork, in the middle of Galway, because we felt that those markets are saturated. The traffic situation as well cannot be the best at times, and so we wanted to give our future employees an alternate employee value proposition, as we call it. Stress-free commuting. You can live in so many communities in that space that I talked about around Athenry. Reasonable cost of living, great schools, great communities. And so we think that's going to be very appealing as an alternative to maybe the hustle and bustle of working in the big cities. And so that's the target, demographic that we're going to be looking at. So that's why we're in Athenry, and again, we're very excited to get started there.
Yeah, and there's definitely a trend toward that when you look at people and the kind of lifestyles and work life balance they're looking for, and that long commute is not appealing to too many people anymore. So that's interesting to hear. What are the kind of people you're looking for, and are you currently hiring?
Yeah, well, we're looking for the best and the brightest, I would say, and we are hiring. We've already hired our senior management team, and we'll be hiring probably 30 or 40 people this year, which will be the next level of leadership. And then next year, in 2025 and into 26, that's when the real heavy lift of recruitment will start. So again, we estimate we'll need 1,000 people by the end of 26. So it's pretty rapid. It's a very highly automated facility. Sometimes when you hear 1,000 jobs, imagine there's got to be a lot of manual assembly, people, standing on lines or sitting, assembling plastic components. And you might have seen that in other facilities and companies. It's not like that at all. This is heavily automated. So we're going to need mechanical engineers, electronic engineers. We've got wet process, so we'll need chemical engineers, microbiologists, and then all the support groups. So, supply chain, materials management, finance, HR. So it's going to be our European headquarters. So we will be standing up a number of other functions there at the site. So, graduate level for sure, but there will also be then, hourly roles, but not as much as maybe you would think, because I would say if we hadn't invested in all of this automation, we'd probably need 5,000 people, not 1,000 people. And then it just wouldn't be practical to do something like that in Ireland. So they're that's the type of roles we're looking for. The response has been amazing. Every role that we post, we're getting literally hundreds of applicants. And people are excited to be part of something new, to be there at the beginning. I think our mission and the type of technology that we're making and the impact we're having on so many people, it's really resonating. So, people who are looking for a purpose-driven, mission-driven organization, exciting startup, in a unique location, we're having a lot of interest. And it's not just from people in Ireland. I'm getting a lot of emails from people on LinkedIn and other forums, Irish people who are working abroad, who maybe didn't have the opportunity to fulfill their career potential in the west of Ireland, and that they're really interested now in moving back. So that was great to hear. And then when we spoke to John Paul, who's our construction general contractor, their leadership team, they're Irish people, but most of their projects are in Germany, mainland Europe, Eastern Europe. And this is the first project that, the management team will actually get to spend living at home and, spending more time with their family. So little stories like that, are kind of feel-good stories, but it just shows you how much talent that there is in the west of Ireland that, for different reasons, have to work abroad commuting every week, or they've had to move, and they see this as an opportunity to come back. So it was great to hear those stories.
And tell me, I'm going to put you on the spot now, Barry, because in the leaders' room, we do always like to get a sense of the human side of the leader. So I think you joined Dexcom back in 2020, if I'm right. Will you tell me just a little bit sort of about your own career path and that led you to your current position as EVP of Global Operations there at Dexcom, and maybe a bit about yourself personally and your background and where you're from?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start where I'm from. I'm from Ballyhonus, County Mayo, originally. I left Ireland 25 years ago, 1999. And I spent my first after I graduated college, University of Limerick, engineering degree, I spent 5 years in Ireland working in the medtech industry. And that was a great foundation for me. But I always had this sense that I wanted to work in the US, and I did like to travel and like to learn. And so I packed my bags and 25 years ago moved to Chicago. And then I lived in Chicago for 12 years, working for a large, diverse medtech and pharma company. And after that, I actually moved to Puerto Rico in the Caribbean and lived there for 4 years and ran some large pharmaceutical and biotech manufacturing operations. And then after being with one company for almost 20 years, I want to do something different, want to test myself and get some new experiences. And so I joined a company that were based out of Memphis, Tennessee. And they were more on the orthopedic side and sports medicine and wound management. And so ran their global supply chain there for about 3 years. And then I joined a company, a smaller company that was doing some really innovative work around shoulder surgery and shoulder replacement. And one of the first companies that were looking at AI to develop algorithms that helped better outcomes for surgeons. And so that really attracted me to that company. And it was so attractive what we were doing, we were actually bought out really quickly by one of the biggest orthopedic companies in the world. And so, there I was waiting for the deal to close. And as I said, I had been introduced to Dexcom already through my good friend and his son. And then, a headhunter called me up and said, listen, there's this small company in San Diego. You probably haven't heard of them. It's probably not something you're interested in. And I said, well, who are they? And they said, it's Dexcom. I said, I'll fly down there tomorrow. I just knew it was meant to be. And I flew in, I met with our CEO and a couple of the senior team and basically shook hands with them and bought a house that afternoon, told my wife we're moving to California, and that was it. And that was 3.5 years ago, and it's been a great journey and one of the best decisions that I've ever made. So yeah, that's been my journey, being all over. Had the good fortune of traveling all over the world and met some amazing people, learned so much. Still very much an Irish person, and still have the accent, even though I've left 25 years ago. And I give a lot of, I'd say, credit to my upbringing, to the culture that I was engrossed in, if you like, in my school years and my college years, my early years in professionally, that has stood me well over time, and so very proud to be Irish, but also, it's great now to be able to give something back, after all that is given to me.
Yeah, it is kind of full circle, isn't it, with Athenry? I love it. And again, maybe before we go back to the technology, because I do want to chat to you further about that, can you just tell me a little bit again about, I suppose, your views on leadership and what a good leader looks like, or, your own leadership style or the style you aspire to?
I gave a presentation recently to our global leadership team. We bring in our top 50 leaders from around the world, and I asked them, what do you want me to talk about? Because I present a lot about business topics, and they said, well, two things. One, what's your vision? Not your vision of the company, but your personal vision. And then two, give us your thoughts on leadership. And so I'll just repeat basically, what I told them. I said that my vision is that Dexcom continuous glucose monitors are affordable and available to all 500 million people in the world that have diabetes. And we will do that, or I will do that, by surrounding myself with people who are passionate, who share an authentic work ethic and a deep desire to get the job done well. And so that's really what gets me out of bed every morning. And what I didn't say earlier is that this amazing technology we have, only 5 million people in the world use it today. That's only 1% of the world's diabetic community. So 1 in 100 people are taking advantage. So there's so much opportunity. So it starts with that. That's what gets me up in the morning and drives me. And then, look, I consider leadership to be a privilege. Look, it's the greatest privilege to lead other people. I think humility is very important. People will, in my experience of doing this for 30 years, people will follow humble leaders who, in humility really being that it's not about them, it's about the mission and it's about the vision, or about the purpose. I think listening is really important. Being a good leader doesn't mean that you've got all the answers, but it means that you need to be able to recognize them. And how do you recognize them? Ask lots and lots of questions. And so that's what I tend to do in most of my meetings. I ask question after question after question, not to try to trick people or expose them in any way, but genuinely trying to understand more. So it's important you surround yourself with amazing people. And I would say my number one role today, after doing this for 30 years, and we have an organization today that I'm responsible for about 5,000 people. So how do I spend my time? And to me, the most important thing is inspiring the organization. Now, inspiring the organization does not equate to being a cheerleader. To me, inspiring an organization means that you're continuously speaking to our authentic purpose and our mission, and that will inspire people because we're fortunate in the type of work that we're doing. So then the question is, well, then how do you inspire people? It's okay to say that. So I would say there's certain traits and behaviors that I hold myself accountable to. One is unbounded enthusiasm. Like every day you show up, you have to bring that enthusiasm because it's the shadow you cast as a leader. 2, strong belief in the importance of integrity. And I think that speaks for itself. I think you need a high level of ambition as a leader, but then you need to couple that with perseverance. You got to keep pushing, pushing, pushing. Nothing good ever came easy. And then I said about the questions earlier, just a constant curiosity and a desire to learn. And then finally, but just as important is having an empathy for others, and then that sense of mutual respect. So that's how I talked about, how I think about leadership at that meeting we had a couple of months ago. And one other thing on leadership, and this is great, and maybe it's not just for leaders, it's for anyone in, whatever their career area is, or area of work is. And it's something that I stole from one of my colleagues here. And she said that there's no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone. And I love that. And I would say if you aspire to be a leader and to be a great leader, never feel comfortable. If you feel comfortable, that means you're not pushing yourself, you're not growing. And that's the hard thing about leadership. It's being willing to put yourself in those outside of your comfort zone and to take some risk. And, for example, this interview today, this wouldn't be typical for me. I might do 2 or 3 of these a year, but dealing with the media it's a whole different animal, but it's something that I enjoy because I feel that I'm learning and I'm growing as I do it. So a lot there, but that from 30 years of doing this, I've had the opportunity to work for some great people, some great leaders. I've tried to mimic and copy as much of the great things that I've seen, and then also try to avoid some of the things that have been not so good. And, so I get very fortunate, but I believe ultimately leadership is a privilege, and there's no greater privilege than to lead people and to ask people to follow you.
Very good. And then I suppose returning to Dexcom and the product itself and the technology, you told us a little bit about it earlier, but what are sort of the aspirations and the ambitions for the future? I mean, I think you've mentioned one, which is you're only hitting 1% of the market at the moment with your products, so there's huge potential for growth. But what about the innovation in the products? And if I'm correct, you've just launched a new version of your main product, am I right? Is it Dexcom One Plus?
That's correct. Yeah. Well, it starts with, I guess in business terms, the total addressable market. And there's a huge market opportunity out there. In our space, there's really 2 really global leaders that dominate. There's probably about 85% of the total market between the 2 companies. And there's loads of space from a business point of view for both of us to grow. But it's this unmet need. And the question would be, well, if this technology is so good and it's so much better than pricking your finger and taking a discrete look at your glucose levels, why isn't everyone using it? Well, I think one is just, it's pretty new technology. It hasn't been around forever, maybe 10 plus years. So I think one is awareness, just general practitioners just aren't aware of this. I think 2 is accessibility, making sure that, the insurance can cover it, which a lot of people are dependent on. And then 3 is access. So we have to work with the regulatory bodies to get this approved. You've got a lot of different sub-elements within the diabetes community. You've got type 1, type 1s that are taking insulin, that are also on pumps, which we call a AID system. So it's basically an artificial pancreas. Then you've got type 2s who are on insulin. You've got there's mealtime insulin, which we call basal insulin users. And then you've got type 2s who don't take insulin at all. And then you've got pre-diabetic people who are trying to avoid becoming a type 2. So we're trying to develop products to meet the needs of all of those different elements of the diabetes community. And up until now, we've really been focused on the type 1 intensively treated users. And we're a leader in that area where you've got our sensor and a pump connected together. So you replace the sensor every 10 days, you replace the pump every 3 days, and basically once you switch them on, they speak to each other. We've got very smart algorithms, and they control your insulin. They're regulated just like your pancreas would. But we're developing products that may be not as complex, not as sophisticated, don't have as many alarms because they're not needed. Products that, don't match with the pump systems, which are better suited for perhaps like a type 2 non-insulin user. So yeah, we're continuously developing off our common basis, which is our leading edge technology, which is the most accurate sensor in the world. So we're using that as the common platform, and then we're developing new form factors, but also new software and new apps, so that depending on what your needs are, we can give you the best experience possible. So yeah, lots to come. But for now, the unmet need in the diabetes area is just so great that that's what we're focused on. And in my role in operations, it's about scaling really quickly so we can build more and more, hundreds of millions of these sensors every year, and then scaling with cost in mind, so that we can make sure that this is affordable to everyone who needs one, who wants one. And that's one of the reasons that we're actually going to Ireland as well. We think that with the innovative culture that's there and the deep experience that they've got in medtech, we can come up with some very effective and efficient operating processes.
Fantastic. Yeah, it really is quite wonderful the way Ireland has become such a kind of a medtech hub, and in particular the West, without question. I suppose I always like to end on as positive a note as possible. And we see so many, we open the papers and we see headlines about, negative stories about technology and everything. But I mean, health tech really has the ability to transform lives, I suppose. We talk about, fast aging populations, greater longevity. What would your own predictions be for the future of medtech and healthcare generally? And are you optimistic about it?
I'm always optimistic. So first of all, we have to be optimistic, and we should be, because there's been so many advances in medtech and pharma and biotech over the last 20 years. I mean, it's just the opportunities or the options for people right now just weren't there. So we've made huge progress. We continue to make progress. Look, I'll take a narrower view on where I see the future, and based on where I'm sitting right now. And, the technology that we use at Dexcom, it's a biosensor, right? Now, today, we're using that primarily to measure glucose levels for people with diabetes. Our R&D organization are also looking at other applications of this technology. So we're looking at potassium, we're looking at lactates, so that we can predict liver, kidney issues. So other core morbidities that you would associate with diabetes and obesity that we can measure with our sensors. And so we're working on that. So I think that glucose is the first, but you're going to see more coming as we go forward. How does that fit into the overall healthcare ecosystem? Well, most adults go for an annual medical. And then part of the annual medical, you go for your blood draws and you get all sorts of tests done on your blood. And then your doctor goes through that with you and says, well, based on all of this, I think you should be on this medication, that medication, whatever. And I'll see you in 12 months. Let me know how you do. And then 12 months goes by and the doctor has no idea if those medications or whatever they've prescribed, or maybe exercise or diet, is working. To me, it's so crazy that that's where we are today, and that's where we've been for decades. So my vision would be that every one of us is a biosensor that's continuously 24/7 feeding us back information around all the chemicals that are in our body, and then proactively can tell you how to alter your lifestyle, your meds. Maybe you need to titrate up or titrate down, your diet, what's working for you, what's not. And then also, as soon as there's something that's off with one of your major organs, it gives you an alert and you go and see your doctor. So now you're not waiting for a problem to happen and then you're dealing with it after the fact. You're 24/7, you're getting this feedback from your body, and it's telling you, the adjustments you should be making to lead a healthy life. So I think it may not be 5 years from now, it could be 10, 15, 20 years from now. I see that as the future, where you move away from that annual blood test and you've got this continuous, and it could be customized to whatever, challenges you may be having health-wise. And then, our mission at Dexcom is simple. We want to empower people to take control of their health. That's how you do it. You give people the data. There is more computing power in a smartphone than there was that NASA had, when they sent the rocket to the moon. I mean, it's crazy. So we have to take advantage of that, and then let people have access to their data, and let them take advantage of that, and then empower them so that they feel responsible, and it's not their doctor's job anymore. It's their own responsibility. So that's where I see at least one part of diagnostic medicine going, and I'm very encouraged by what we've done so far. I'm encouraged by the new opportunities we see with the technology, but also I think a lot of other companies will move into this space, and this will become a very different dynamic to personal healthcare going forward.
Amazing. That I love that vision, and my gosh, wouldn't that be transformative for people? Incredible. And I can tell that you brought your enthusiasm to the office this morning, as you discussed earlier. Listen, it has been fantastic to talk to you, Barry. I'm really grateful, and really great to get a sense of Dexcom, but also a bit about yourself. So thank you so much for being with us in the Leaders Room.
You're very welcome, Anne. It was my pleasure.